Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. For the past 3 years, we've been exchanging voice notes on everything from the highs in Porto to the lows of Potter. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
So here we are again, another wretched day for the Chelsea Football Club. It's becoming a theme, isn't it? It's just 1 week after the next. Obviously, Aston Villa 2, Chelsea 1. Two really disappointing goals to concede. Shockers, really. Absolutely shockers. I felt for Jorgensen. I didn't think he actually had a terrible game up until the howler that went in. But unfortunately, like strikers, you're judged on chances missed. Goalkeepers are judged on basically keeping the real simple stuff to a minimum. And unfortunately, we've got two goalkeepers that just seem to cost you points every single week. Yeah, a much better game from Chelsea. Obviously, the formation slightly changed. Reece James playing in midfield there I think it worked for the most part. It gave us a bit of steel, and obviously as Reece gets fitter, that's going to be a very good thing to have him playing through the middle and be able to thread passes through to the likes of Palmer and Neto, etc. But he didn't have a great start, James. His first half was a little bit underwhelming. He gave the ball away a little bit. I think he's not, I would say, completely match fit, if I'm honest with you. So to play 90 minutes in midfield today is a good thing for us. But I think he certainly lost the ball a few times in the first half through, I think, just being a bit tired. As the game wore on, I thought he grew into it and he did much better. I think Chelsea as a whole today have played very well on the face of it. Not outstanding. Let's not get too giddy and carried away. It was only 1-1. I'm not going to sit here and say we were that. Villa had their chances and they kept coming all the time. Bear in mind they played a game in midweek. They seemed a lot fitter than we did. I don't know what anyone else thought, but they kept coming and coming. And obviously Rashford and Milan and stuff, they started to link up well. And obviously Asensio got both goals. He was getting a load of praise on Sky Sports just then, Asensio. Literally, one was almost an own goal and one was a weak shot that Jorgensen should have just picked up with his penis, quite frankly. But yeah, I'm just really disappointed, if I'm honest. I thought I would have loved to have won the game, clearly, but at 1-1 I was thinking we can build on this. I thought if we get a 1-1 draw here, we've got two home games against two quite poor sides in Southampton and Leicester, and we have to win both of those. I thought we could come away with it would feel like a decent result. A lot of results today went for us again. You could have seen Man City potentially dropping points tomorrow. You could see Forest and Newcastle taking points off each other tomorrow as well. You felt as though a draw wouldn't have been the worst result in the world, but I think it's just becoming a real ask now. And the trouble is, we're not scoring enough goals. Palmer's missed a few today and Kunku's missed one or two. Neto's had his chances. Enzo's had a couple. And we just haven't really... we those chances that were flying in at the start of the season suddenly now just completely dried up. And when Palmer was clean through, a great ball by Caicedo in the second half just to make it 2-1. You're thinking, go on, just slide it in. And we just seem to be doing that thing now where maybe decision making is not quite as clear as it was at the start of the season. We seem to be a little bit foggy, a bit hazy there. Do we pass? Do we shoot? And unfortunately, we just keep getting it wrong, and it's another away defeat. And I don't know what people really think about it. Personally, from having watched that, I didn't feel too unhappy. Villa are a very good side, and I thought for the most part, we were certainly in the game, and we gave them a lot of trouble. At the end of it all, you still come away with 0 points. And I think the away support today seemed to be they're not going to be pleased to lose, obviously, but they seemed a lot happier. I'm happier with just fucking effort. Where was his effort against Brighton? Where was it? Where's it been? And there's been lots of games, not just Brighton. There's been loads of games where you're just thinking, where's that effort been? That's the one thing I would say about that. That's why I'm disappointed, but I'm not unhappy because we actually fucking tried. I think that's what disappoints me the most is I think you can play bad. You can not have your best night, but you can run around. And what I would say about James being in midfield, he can at least talk to a few people and actually get hold of a few people in there. And when you're playing fullback, it's a lot more difficult to shout from one side of the pitch to the other. I think overall there was some fairly good performances. I thought Enzo had a good game. I thought Caicedo had a good game. I thought Palmer was good. He made some very good runs, Palmer. We didn't quite get him in enough in the first half. I think Nkunku was better, but again, still fairly ineffectual. But Neto was a sort of a decent pick in that sort of forward line. It gave them something to think about. He could be a handful there. I think he's got goals in Southampton and Leicester, certainly, if he continues to play this formation and this system. I think Neto will have some joy. But unfortunately, he's just not a goal scorer, is he? He's not used to scoring lots of goals. So I think when he gets in front of goal, he's just not as prolific as you would like. I just think we came today, at least we've worked on stuff. You felt as though for the last few weeks we've just been basically rinse, repeat, and at least there was something behind the performance today. You can get your teeth into a formation change and get your teeth into some more effort and some steel that was put into the side, which hasn't been there for the last few weeks and months. So that is a positive, but I'm clutching a straw slightly. But overall, I'm obviously massively disappointed to lose. I think my fear is we're nowhere near the top 4 or 5 positions. I think now, having seen us play for the last 3 months, I feel as though our running at the end of the year is just too difficult, and we needed to win these games and keep, obviously, winning against, I keep saying it, Leicester and Southampton. You have to win them and then hope for some luck. But we've had quite a lot of luck already this year with other teams dropping points too. I just feel we are obviously still in that mix a little bit, but everybody else behind us now, even Fulham are only 4 points behind us. Brighton are only a point behind us, I think, with the game. No, if they win the game in hand, they're a point behind us, I think. And it suddenly becomes like you're in a real fight now. If you're not careful, you could drop to 10th position. If you don't beat Leicester and Southampton, you'll definitely be, you will be 10th after that. Comfortably be 10th after that. And that's when he's going to have a real struggle. You cannot spend what we've spent and buy those players that we've brought in and be sitting in 9th and 10th position. The fans are just not going to take it. They're not going to accept that. You can't keep doing it. And particularly having finished where they did last year and after a sort of a 5th or 6th and a really good campaign towards the end, the fans only remember that. So Enzo's got a big job on his hands here. Whether you think they played well today or not, the last few months have been so piss poor, and I think he will regret not changing things earlier. That's very naive of him to just think, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing every single week and hope for a different result, because that's what's going to catch him out in the end. And yeah, I suppose I'm pleased with the performance, but obviously not pleased with the result.
Oh, Joe and everyone listening, I am gutted with that. I think some defeats, some results, some games hit you harder, don't they, than others. I think in the last 2 Brighton games, my emotion has been more anger with the situation, anger with the performance, and obviously that kind of came across. And today, actually, I'm just gutted. It felt like a really big game today, really big game. We went 1-0 up. I was buzzing. I thought we were playing really well. I thought, he changed something. Thank God he changed something. And you had Neto down the middle, looking really lively. And you just felt, there was a second goal there for us, wasn't there? Didn't take it, weren't clinical enough. Going at half time, you thought, this could be massive, because you win today, the momentum it then gives you, got 2 what should be home bankers, and then suddenly you get 9 points going into the Arsenal game, which is a little bit of a hit and hope. If you get anything there, it's a bonus. And then you go into the international break, and suddenly, hopefully, a lot of the players will be back from injury again into what will be a big run of games. So it felt at that point just massive. And I messaged you even when it went 1-1, didn't I, Joe? Said, this is a massive half an hour for our season. And just 2 massive moments, aren't there? Palmer's miss. Just you again. We both WhatsApp said you'd put your house on him, you put your mortgage on him, you put everything on him to score. He doesn't. And then when that happened, you just had a bad feeling that something would go wrong. And I mean, what can you say about the goal? What can you say about the situation? A proper punch in the gut, wasn't it? And you knew that we wouldn't. You knew that was it, even with 7 minutes added on, whatever it was. You knew that was the game done for us, because that's just the way that things feel at the moment. And just a sickener, just a real sickener. And yeah, it's hard to see where our season goes from here, really. It's sorry to feel, sort of sound so down about it, but it just feels It just feels really gutting, really gutting. We've been pretty critical, I think, in recent weeks of Maresca. I don't actually think he can be blamed today. It's down to some poor individual moments in both ends of the pitch, really. I think there's a few people on social media saying could he have done different subs and stuff like that, but we didn't have much on the bench. Would you prefer to have seen Tyreek George come on? Maybe. He was really good against Brighton, but equally it's a big, tough away Premier League game. I understand him not wanting to throw a kid on in that situation. And again, as we said, the plan was working. One thing is I absolutely I cannot stand this offside trap that we've been playing this season. That sort of high sit on the edge of the box offside trap that I believe he learnt from Pellegrini, believe it or not, back in the day. And we've been caught out multiple times doing it, most notably now against Villa and Arsenal at home earlier in the season, very similar goals. But we've seen it in a few European games as well, and it's just it just looks horrific, doesn't it, when it goes wrong? And to be honest, it's going wrong often enough for it to be a bit of a liability.
A quick question to you, Chris. What do you think on Chelsea's sort of striker/goalkeeper situation? Do you feel as though that the pressure's just too much playing for Chelsea at times? I feel as though when we buy strikers and goalkeepers at the moment, it just feels, if Jorgensen was playing for Brighton or Brentford, he'd probably be okay. And I just wonder if how much worse is he than Verbruggen, for example? Is he that much worse than Verbruggen? I know he's dropped the ball today. Take that aside. Is it just a pressure thing? He's 20-odd years old, not played that many first-team games for Chelsea, in and out of the side in Europe and stuff. I don't know. I just feel as though, do you think the pressure's too much for some of these guys? Are they too young? And I think for me, goalkeeper's way too young in that area. I think you need to go a little bit more experienced. Also, we've got Sanchez. He's not doing it either. He's obviously 27. But I just wonder if just playing for Chelsea is just a bit like Man United at the moment. Is the shirt sort of wearing a bit heavy on them? What do you think?
Let's split it in two. On the striker situation, we just haven't bought enough, have we, in that area? I don't think Jackson's done a huge amount wrong. He just hasn't had any support. So I don't necessarily think it doesn't feel the same with him as it does like a Man United situation where their strikers they don't look like they've got the character to carry the shirt. I think with Jackson, actually, I like him. I think he has got that fight. Sometimes that kind of, he hates being taken off, doesn't he? Hates not being on there to score goals and stuff. But actually, I don't mind that. I think he's got the personality. He has a personality where you look at him and think, yeah, he could well be a really good player for Chelsea in years to come. He just needs help. We just need another option up there. And let's be honest, that option should probably have been in Nkunku. I think we thought it would be, but he's been really disappointing, and yet again he was today. But if we had got a John Duran, if we had got even a Omaridian, who obviously we even did a pod about him in pre-season because it was, we got a here we go on him from Fabrizio. That didn't happen, and he ended up going to the Porto, and he's absolutely smashed the goals in. I looked at the stats the other day and I sent them to you, Joe, and he smashed the goals in. But the point is, I don't think the striker situation is hugely on that. I think it's more we haven't spent enough money and we have to address that in the summer. I would go and I'd go and consider a Gyökeres or an Osimhen. I think both of them have got clauses, I think, in the summer, which means that you're not necessarily paying silly money. It will be, I think they're both around the 60, 70 million mark, which, bear in mind the amount of money that Chelsea throw around. We spend on a couple of youth players, don't we? So that's where I'd be spending my money. Keeping Jackson and just bringing one of them in to help him out. Because also, as we know, Jackson can play off the left. We know that. So it isn't even a one and only. You go back to Anelka and Drogba playing up together. It can be done. So I'd be doing that. Goalkeeper situation is different. Goalkeeper situation is very different, and it's been just horrifically managed by the club and by the sporting directors. But I just don't think they're good enough, to be honest. I just don't think that either Sanchez or Jorgensen are good enough to play for Chelsea. And from what I've seen and heard, both sets of fans from their former clubs, obviously Brighton and was it Villarreal, were more than happy for them to leave and sent them with a shot of warning. about them coming to Chelsea. And I think you see it. And unfortunately, and again, I think he was a bit unlucky because he played all right until that moment. But being a goalkeeper is about the moments, isn't it? Jorgensen. And I think maybe we saw in that moment why Maresca had been reluctant to throw him in and to take Sanchez out of the team. He'd made a lot of saves in the Conference League, but equally, he hadn't always looked convincing, had he, in that? And I think you just saw in that moment, I mean, it was as bad a goal as you'll see, really. And yeah, the money that's been spent, it's just been horrific, isn't it? The amount of money we've spent on goalkeepers, of which none of them are an elite number one goalkeeper. And it's one of those positions where you don't necessarily need age. And I get what you're saying there, but I think we've had two of the best examples in Petr Cech and Courtois, who were young goalkeepers, but had just so much ability, came in as world class and with huge personalities to match. You know, both of them, Cech really as a leader, captain of Czech Republic eventually, all that kind of stuff. Courtois is, let's be honest, a bit of a snake, but to be fair, a big personality, like very confident. And with these young keepers we've got, none of them have really had that, have they? They haven't had that, they don't have that charisma. That said, with the young squad that we've got, it would have been a position I definitely would have brought age and experience in. And I think, ironically, because we played against him today, but 2 years ago, I remember saying, just get Martinez, get Emilio Martinez from Villa. It'd be tough to get him out, but he's not young. And if you put a 60 million bid in and the promise of your one last big contract, you'd have a good chance of getting him. And that would have been one of those positions. I would have just done a deal like that, sort the position out for 5-6 years. If you do see a Mike Penders, who they obviously think could be really good, go and get him, but create the room like we did with Cech to Courtois, where you can look after him for 3 or 4 years before you can have loans and all that kind of stuff before you need to be thinking about him in the first team. But Chelsea have left themselves completely open in that area, and the number of games and goals we've now given away from mistakes is tragic, and it's the reason we are where we are. And in fairness to Maresca, it's not his fault. There's nothing he can do about those situations. Have to have sympathy for him there. But yeah, really disappointing. And go back further, and he had his moments at the end of his time at Chelsea where he wasn't all that convincing, but Petr Cech recommended Edouard Mendy to Chelsea, who came in, obviously was incredible in the run we won the Champions League. Wasn't always brilliant with his feet, so maybe wouldn't have fit this style of play, but you would feel a lot more confident with him in goal, wouldn't you, than any of these guys. And you could throw Kepa into the mix and other players like Petrovic as well, but I'm not sure any of them have been quite good enough. It's the fact that we've spent so much money now trying to find the right person and not spending just big once in a pretty much a guarantee, which is really poor. Yeah, absolutely gutting. Saturday night, ruined, if I'm being honest, in terms of my mood. Onwards and upwards.
I think the biggest regret for me, and I think Maresca should be feeling it, if he's not, there's something wrong, but is just how we haven't earned the right to play in a lot of these games in the past 10 matches. I feel as though we've turned up to a few of them with the sort of attitude of, we'll win eventually, whatever happens, we're better than you. And then we've either been pegged back from a winning position, or in some cases, like again yesterday, we've had the lead and then we've lost it again. And then we haven't been able to get back into the game or find a killer blow. A bit like that in the Palace game when you're 1-0 up and we had a few chances to make it 2-0 and never did. And then with 15 minutes to go, or it was, Mateta goes in and scores an equaliser. And from that point onwards, we never looked like scoring. And I feel as though that's probably our biggest regret. And, you know, as a boy growing up, the first thing you're taught, and I teach this to my kids as well, is that you've got to earn the right to play. And by that means you've got to do all the hard, dogged crap work. You've got to run for an hour and put these teams completely to bed in terms of wearing them out. And if they want to make substitutions, fine. But clearly, often when they're bringing on substitutions, they're not as good as the first team players. But you and yourself can also bring on substitutions if you want to bring on fresh legs. But you have to earn the right to play. You have to bully these teams into submission. And I feel as though in some cases, we're the ones that are getting bullied. And if you go back to the Brighton game, both Brighton games, we turned up with a really sour, fucking terrible attitude in both of those matches. And we then couldn't turn it around on the day. The amount of times you see it in youth football, or whatever level you go to, whether it's conference, I was going to say Vauxhall Conference, then that show my age. But if you're going to go like non-league or championship or whatever, everyone in these leagues has to earn the right. And you listen to managers up and down the country, they're always saying the same thing. Maybe it's an English thing, I don't know. But you have to fight and scrap for the first 45 minutes, the first hour, and then chances open up for you. When games are tight, a bit like last night, it's 1-1 for basically the whole of the second half. But you always felt like you were in the game. And I think Chelsea yesterday, they did earn the right. If Chelsea had gone on to win that yesterday 2-1, I'd have been like, they earned that. They worked their socks off. There were some really good, hard-working performances out there. But in all the other games that we've played recently, and I can pretty much point to most of them, if not all of them, even the couple of games that we won, I thought we were very fortunate. I thought the West Ham game, we were fortunate to win in the end, the way it panned out. And even Wolves came with a game plan, and it nearly worked. And they could have easily turned us over, or certainly gone away with a point. And I just feel as though these are just key moments in the season, and we're going to look back with just such dread and think, oh my word, why didn't we do this and why didn't we do that? And a bad attitude, unfortunately, in any of these games, you will get found out. The Premier League is no place for hiding. And so this isn't an Aston Villa summary note, I know, as such, but it's just a few thoughts that I've had over the last sort of few weeks and months, is that I just feel there's been a little bit of maybe infighting at times. You can certainly see the front line don't seem to be as cohesive as they could be. Palmer's disappointed with Nkunku. You can see Nkunku's disappointed with Palmer. That they're not really passing the ball to each other at the key moments. And there was a couple of times yesterday when we get into that final third and we're edging into the 18-yard box, and we just make a poor decision. We could square a ball, we could pull a ball back or something, and yet we go for an awkward shot. And you think Neto was a great example for the goal that we scored. Bombed down the wing, took his player on, showed real aggression and fight, and pulled the ball back, and a great run from Enzo to score his goal. And you think to yourself, brilliant, unselfish play. And we needed more of that. And I felt as though we were shooting, even though we had some good chances. I felt like there was maybe one more pass before we could have that final shot. I felt like we maybe rushed the shot. I suppose what kind of hit the nail on the head was when Palmer had that ball edge of the 18-yard box. He had to scurry around with the ball to try and keep hold of it. He had three players around him, but he managed to sort of wriggle his way out, and then he passed that ball across to Nkunku. And maybe it was slightly overhit, but I think Simon Johnson from The Athletic has to say that it was a bad pass. And Nkunku got a lot of stick for not trying to get it, but I don't think it was. I think Nkunku should have got that ball. And then obviously Palmer thinks to himself, I've just wriggled out of a three-man weave here to give you a ball on the edge of just inside the 18-yard box, and you couldn't be bothered to stick your leg out. You just went, oh, no, I can't be asked. And that was a turning point for me yesterday, when Palmer then never gave him the ball back. And Nkunku pretty much fell out the game from that point onwards. Not that he was in the game hugely before then, but he was at least better than he has been. Chelsea now have after these next two games, a very tough run of matches. And if they don't pick up points against Leicester and Southampton, or if they only pick up two, just so they picked up two draws, we are going to be in serious trouble, because our running is appalling compared to pretty much every other team. So we're in big trouble if we don't pick up 6 points against these two teams, and at least give ourselves a fighting chance against Arsenal, who at least don't have a striker. So there is at least a glimmer of hope there, but that is only a glimmer. And yeah, I'm not getting ahead of myself, but disappointed for Jorgensen. Obviously, again, it's in this situation where we've now got ourselves into, we basically had what seems to be two backup goalkeepers, and going into the last 13 or 12 games of the season, whatever it is, I think as a manager, I'll be sitting there with my hands looking between my fingers, hoping, did he save it? Did he save that one? Because whoever plays, one's not particularly great with their feet, and the other one I think is a bit better with his feet, but maybe makes a couple of less saves. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. And like you say, I could rant and moan about the sporting directors on this voice note about how they haven't spent the money wisely or whatever, but that's for another day.
Hey, it's Chris here with a really quick message. Check us out on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. You'll find video clips, photos, and much more about everything we discuss on the show. Plus, it's a great way to get in touch to tell us your thoughts, share your feedback, or just say hi. Follow us on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. And now, back to the show. Right, final thought for me on the pod this week. And do you know what? I think kind of part of the joy or misery of this format that we have is that you get the raw kind of emotional reaction actually a lot of the time from me and Joe with this voice note kind of format. And I think, yeah, you definitely got that with our Saturday night reactions there. I think you could feel the disappointment and general feeling in that voice that we had. But it's Sunday afternoon now and time is a great healer. And I'm kind of looking at it and trying to be a little bit more positive if I can, which is that Chelsea have now 4 very winnable games in a row. Chelsea home to Southampton, obviously on Tuesday. Then we've got the Copenhagen game the following Thursday. It's got a 9-day break then. Then we're home to Leicester and then we're home to Copenhagen before we play Arsenal. Now, nothing is a given, as we know. Nothing, especially the way we're currently playing, never has it been more true. But if Chelsea can win those 4 games, if Chelsea can get that feeling back of scoring goals, just get a bit of confidence back, I think it could do us the world of good. And suddenly, as we know, because our season turned almost instantaneously, really. As soon as we had a little bit of that blip over Christmas, it all very quickly went wrong, didn't it? But things can turn back the other way just as quickly, I think. And in the league particularly, if we can get those 6 points, we're seeing what's happening around us. Everyone is beating each other, aren't they? And look at Forest, who looked unassailable just a couple of weeks ago. They're suddenly now lost 3 and 4. So I don't think there's a given that any of the teams around us are a guarantee to put a really strong run together to the end of the season. I think Chelsea, it looks like it'll be top 5, more than likely, for Champions League. And there's 12 games left, of which Chelsea have 7 at home. If Chelsea can win of those 12 games, 6 or 7, and then pick up a couple of draws, which at the moment feels almost impossible. But with some of those fixtures we've got coming up to get a bit of momentum back, and then after the international break, a lot of the talk is, and we'll see, but the talk is that players like Jackson, Lavia, Fofana, even Badiashile, all could be back, fit, Madueke, etc. We suddenly look at potentially a very different team, and it's smarting from the defeat yesterday, of course, but you look back at that Villa game when we were brilliant, probably our best performance of the season, and a big part of that team was missing last night. That was Fofana, superb. It was Lavia, Caicedo and Enzo all played together in that game. They were brilliant. You had Jackson playing really well. You had Madueke playing well. It's a very different... It's only 4 or 5 players, but actually that's half your team. That's half the outfield. And I think if Chelsea can go into that international window back in amongst it, in that top 5, things can change. And it's that thing, isn't it? When you're playing well, every game looks winnable. When you're playing badly, you can't see where win's coming from, and actually every game it's bloody hard. But things can change quickly. And I think I've said it before on the pod, I think we didn't realise probably earlier in the season how useful it was with those Conference League games. It really helped the squad balance because everyone was getting a game every week. At that point, Maresca was seen as a genius because he was managing the squad so well. But also there was that winning momentum that we were constantly getting every week. A good win midweek. Everyone comes in the training ground buzzing. Whether you've played or not, you're part of that winning culture. And wins breed wins, don't they? Chelsea haven't had that. And what they need to do in the next 4 games is go and get 4 good performances, 4 good wins. And then suddenly, you see it with Spurs, don't you? They couldn't buy a win. Suddenly they've had three league wins in a row. And I'm sure you look at them and they could slowly start sort of creeping up the table again. Things can turn pretty quickly, I think. And yeah, I wanted to finish the pod on a slightly more optimistic kind of pointer. I think Tuesday's huge. If we don't win on Tuesday, you will not be hearing this type of positive attitude on Wednesday. I'll warn you that. But I think if we win on Tuesday, start to look like there's direction again. The performance was good against Villa. Incredibly unlucky to lose the game. Individual errors, both ends of the pitch, as we've already said. So let's wait and see. And we've got a bit of a special pod after the game against Southampton. We've had some fantastic analysis sent to us from a listener on where Chelsea have spent their money. Where has that 1.4 billion been spent? And some fantastic analysis that we're going to talk through, which has not really been seen anywhere else that we've seen online. So well worth coming back to listen to that one, and hopefully it'll be on the back of a good win. Keep the faith, come on you Blues, and we'll see you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.